Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. That's right, we have another bike build project for this summer. In today's video, guys, I want to talk to you guys about my brand new frame set that you see behind me, which is the TanTan or Seraph, however you pronounce her name, who knows, who cares, but this is their X38 super aero looking frame set. So in this video, guys, we're going to be talking about who is TanTan, we're going to be talking about the frame set, the price, what's included with the frame, why I chose this particular frame set, the weight of the frame, and of course my plans for this build. Oh, and by the way, if you are new to my channel, my name is Patrick Lino and I am a cyclist in the Chicagoland area who builds bikes, who does bike reviews. And if you really want to support the channel, then please let Elves USA know that I'm looking to review their latest Seraph Evo Pro frame set, because I sent them an email like 5-6 months ago and they have completely ghosted me ever since. So please let them know. So without further ado, let's begin. So first off, who is TanTan? So TanTan or Seraph, they are a OEM factory based in Shenzhen, China, which is pretty typical. And of course, they manufacture a variety of things like wheels, frames, components. They're basically like all these other OEM suppliers like Dangfu, Yo-Yo, Airwolf. You get the idea. Now moving on to the frame set. So the frame set that you see behind me, this is the TanTan X38 Aero frame set. The price on this is $500 USD. $160 in shipping, and then when you factor in PayPal fees, I paid with my own money a total of about $700 USD. Now the fulfillment and shipping time, it took about 3 weeks, because for this particular frame set, because they don't sell a lot of them, when you go to order, most likely you'll have to wait for them to actually make your frame, because I don't think they keep a lot of inventory in stock. The size I went with is a size 56 frame. Next up, what's included with the X38 frame set from TanTan? So it comes with all the usual things you would expect at this price point. So it comes with an integrated set of handlebars. It includes those matching spacers, the headset bearings, the through axles, a dust cover for the seat post, and it also includes a saddle clamp for both metal or titanium rails as well as carbon rail saddles that has the 7 by 9 millimeters carbon rails. So nice touch from TanTan to provide that, especially at this price point. Now the website on TanTan says that this frame has room for 32C tires, which is absolutely incorrect. I was able to fit 32C Continental GP5000 tubeless tires on the front of the bike. However, for the back of the bike on the rear wheel, there was no way that 32C tires were fitting at all. Even if I were to deflate the tire to fit it on, there's no way it would fit at all. And Chinese brands, unfortunately, are notorious for overstating the tire clearance on their frames, but I just don't understand why TanTan would do that in this particular frame set, because this frame, for being such an aggressive and aero frame set, there's really no reason why you would be running anything wider than the 28C tires. But nonetheless, I'm going to be running 28C, so I'm not too concerned that it does not fit a set of 32C tires. Now, next up, let's talk about why I chose this particular frame. And if you look at it behind me and look at it in some of the B-roll footage, you can probably figure out why I chose it. It's because this frame looks almost identical to a Scott Foil RC Pro frame or bike, which that bike is what, like $13,000 for the top spec. But yeah, this frame looks a lot like that frame, which I really like. And honestly, just in the last couple of years, there really hasn't been a lot of unique road frames on the market, especially for under $1,000. And it seems like with a lot of the major brands out there, they seem to be always wanting to offer or sell frames that resemble something like a Tarmac SL7. So that's why this frame really stood out to me. It's super aggressive looking. It has such a chunky seat post area. The bottom bracket looks super reinforced, and the down tube, everything just looks very chunky. It looks so much different than sort of your typical standard SL7 looking one bike to do it all sort of frame set. Now the reason why this bike looks so aggressive is because it's basically shaped like a TT bike. And even though the seat post angle is fairly typical, the design of this frame overall lends itself to have the rider basically be directly over the bottom bracket, just like you would on a TT bike, basically having your elbows locked in at sort of a 90-degree position over the hoods. And that's actually how I plan to set up this frame. Hopefully I can get low enough, but for someone who needs a lot of reach and a low stack, I think I should be able to sort of mimic that TT position on the road bike. Now going back to the Scott Foil RC really quickly, I'm going to put up a comparison chart on the screen right now, so you kind of get an idea of the shape of the X38 versus the Scott Foil RC Pro. The X38 is in white, and then the Scott Foil is in black over the screen. And shout out to the forums, the China forums, because someone actually put this chart together ahead of time, so kudos to that individual. But as you can see, the shapes are pretty similar, but there are a couple of subtle differences. So one, the top tube on the X38, it's a little bit more parallel to the ground, which should lead to maybe a higher C tube. The fork on the X38 is a little bit thinner than the Scott Foil, and just the overall bottom bracket is a little bit smaller in height compared to the Scott Foil. But nonetheless, both these frames do look pretty close in size, and you figure for $600, you can basically have a bike that kind of looks like a Scott Foil RC.
Alrighty, and you guys know what time it is. It's time to weigh out the frame, the handlebars, the uncut fork, as well as the seat posts. Shout out to Lou Rawls, classic singer from my parents' time. And on this particular LP live, he's got a fantastic rendition of the song The Girl from Ipanema. Is that how you say it? Ipanema? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below how to properly pronounce that beach from Brazil. But anyway, let us get cracking. So first up is the frame set. Now the frame set, TanTan X38, unpainted, and with the frame, like I said, it's unpainted. We removed the bottle cage bolts, but we still have the front derailleur hanger as well as the rear derailleur hanger as well, and then the plastic cable guides. So we have a total for just the frame set 1,148 grams. Again, that's for both derailleur hangers and the inner cable guides, unpainted, size 56. Next up is the handlebars. All right, handlebars are 395 grams. One thing I should mention when it comes to integrated handlebars, the way that these Chinese brands measure the stem length, because for this integrated handlebars, it's 400 millimeters in width and then 120 millimeters for the stem. But the way that they measured the stem length, rather than being from the particular like sort of imaginary line where the metal faceplate would go, they actually measured from the immediate center of the top bar. So what ends up happening is 120 millimeters in stem length ends up being effectively more like 135 millimeters in length. So make sure you keep that in mind when you are sizing the correct size for your integrated handlebars. Next up, we have the seat posts, which includes the saddle clamp. We have 209 grams, also unpainted. And last but not least, is the uncut fork, also unpainted. Uncut fork, we have 383 grams. So let's continue.
Now moving on to the first impressions of this TanTan X38. It looks and feels just like every other unpainted Chinese frame that I've tested in this price point from $500 to $900 USD. It looks like there has been some attempt to face the caliper mount, and even in my past experience with these unpainted frames, I haven't had any issues aligning the calipers to prevent disc rub. It hasn't been an issue, so I'm not too worried about that on this frame set as well. And because this frame is unpainted, the T47 threaded bottom bracket area, it looks like there aren't really too much defects on there, and so I'm hoping that I should be able to thread in a dub T47 bottom bracket with no problems. I do have one coming in later, so I'll make sure to test this out before I get started on painting it. And just the overall quality of the sanding on this frame, again, it is unpainted. The sanding could have probably been better, but for $500, it's not a big deal. And like I said, I'm going to be painting over this frame. So that does moving on to our final point, my plans for this build. So like I said, I'm going to be painting this frame. Probably not going to do anything too crazy because it is just a cheap budget frame at the end of the day. I already kind of have it staged with some wheels that I plan on testing as well. Going to probably do SRAM Force ETAP because right now, at least in the United States, you can basically get SRAM ETAP for basically almost half off of what it cost a couple years ago. So it's a pretty easy choice. And I'm going to be basically using using this setup for this frame as sort of my tester bike to do, you know, if you wanted to use it for racing as a cheap crit bike, that's what we're going to test. Not that I'm going to necessarily use this on racing, but I'm going to test to see if this bike can basically replace some of the more expensive options for a super budget race bike. I'm imagining that the stiffness on this bike, because it is super chunky with the down tube, the bottom bracket, and the seat post area, I'm imagining this bike to be hopefully the stiffest bike that I've tested, even stiffer than my Dangfu R12 for under $1,000. And because, you know, unfortunately, this is a cheap budget frame, even if the ride is very, very stiff, I doubt that it's going to be the most compliant frame I've ever tested. For a cheap frame, and a cheap frame that's also stiff, usually compliancy is usually not something that goes along with that, but only time will tell, guys. So this was just a quick overview on this frame. Look out later this summer as I'll get this frame painted, I'll get some wheels, get the bike build going, and then I'll be able to take it out on the road to see if this bike truly is going to be one of the stiffest frames that you can buy for under $1,000. So as always, guys, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I will check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.